Hello everyone, good morning. I just started the session 2 minutes early, guys. So we'll wait until it's 6:1 or 6:2 and we'll get started.
Good morning, President.
Yeah, very good morning. Okay, let's get started. Yes, I'm sharing my screen. So yes, we're going to, I've logged into OIC instance from here. I've logged into OIC instance from here. And when you go into menu options, so there are three key cloud services that we see in OIC. You've got integrations, VBCS and PCS. Integrations, this is where you build a wide variety of integrations. And those integrations can be inbound, outbound, web service-based approach integrations, file-based approach integrations, a lot of possibilities in here. And as part of the course, we'll be building close to 15 plus integrations here. And we can also build a complex web or mobile applications in VBCS. And to support those applications, we can build approval process or any business process here. In today's session, we're going to focus on this particular navigation option. Okay, so in design, nothing but integrations, read it as integrations. And when you get into it, so this page is called as an integration designer page. And even when you build integrations in OIC, or when you start working in real time, you would spend at least 75 to 80% of your time in this particular screen. Because all the projects that you do would definitely involve integrations work. Some of them might involve VBCS and PCS work as well. Okay, but integrations is a key. Now I'll give you an overview of the navigation and I'll talk about few important points in this screen. So we'll spend whole session talking about the options that we have in this screen, and it deserves it. This screen is so important that you need to know whatever I'm going to explain in today's session. So first things first, the moment you click on integrations here, just give me one moment, guys. Okay, the moment you click on integrations or any of the tab, the first thing that happens is whatever username that you have used, with whatever username that you have logged in, that would be applied as a filter. That would be applied as a filter. And you would notice that the last 16 integrations, that you have updated recently will be showing up here. So I logged in as user one here, right? What is it that I get to do? Get to see user one is applied as a filter. And the last 16 integrations that I have updated will be pulled over from database. See, there is a DB attached to OIC. We cannot access that DB, but from that database, it is going to pull those 16 integrations and it is going to populate them into the table. And as you scroll down, I scroll down, you see the next 16 integrations are populated. You don't see the count here, but integrations would be populated in multiples of 16 into this particular table. Okay. And you could see that there are almost 658 integrations that I have updated recently. And for every integration that you see here, you would be able to see a sort of a preview here, like what exactly we are doing in that integration. It's a scheduled orchestration. And you can also see what connections you are using within the integration flow. So even without opening the integration, I can understand what is the flow and I can understand what are the connections used. Okay. And you can see the integration name, version number, and you can see the style of the integration. Will come to this in a moment, because when you create an integration, you can pick and choose which style is appropriate for your integration. And you can see when exactly it was updated recently, and you would be able to see the status as well. And again, as we build integrations in the course, we will be able to see what is the status or what are the various status possible, etc. We'll focus on this as we progress in the course. Now, when you go into any of the tab, the username will be applied as a filter. 16 integrations populated here. And if you scroll down, the next 16 integrations will be loaded into this. So when we do complex integrations build, guys, especially, we will not be able to complete the build in just 1 day or 2 days. Okay, you might build some complex integrations for almost like 2 to 3 weeks. And after you close for a day, next day morning when you log in, if you want to resume your integration build, at least I don't do it. And others also won't do it. We normally don't go down and search for our integration. Instead, there is a quick search option here. So you can search for it by entering the name. So I can search with my integration name, and you don't need to enter a full name. Just a partial name is sufficient. So if I say UG58, you will be able to see all the integrations I created for that particular batch. So yes, we can easily search for the integration that we were building yesterday, and we'll pick that one up. Say, for example, if I'm interested in Salesforce to ERP service, I'll just search for it like this. I'll get into the integration and I'll start doing, and I'll resume the build on the next day morning. Okay, so we can search for the integrations by entering either the full or partial integration name. And you also have an option to search for the integration by entering various other filters, guys. So you see there is a status, right? So say, for example, there are a few statuses possible, like draft, configured, active, etc. So I'll tell you how the status of an integration changes from draft to configured, configured to active. And we'll also discuss what is this locked means. When we do the first integration, I'll explain the statuses. But if required, I can also apply filters using this option. Say, for example, if I want to see only the active integration, I can just apply that filter. And that's going to show me only the active integrations. So this way, yes, by default, your user will be applied as a filter, but you can apply additional filters if required. You can only see the scheduled orchestrations if you want. You can only see the scheduled orchestrations if you want. So you have an option to apply various filters. And the username that is applied as a filter, right? You can also take this off. How many integrations you see here, guys? 658. Do you remember that number? So if I close this or if I take off this filter, what is it that's going to happen? You see 680, which means there are almost like 32 integrations. Did I get it right? 22 integrations, sorry. There are around 22 integrations that other developer has worked on. Okay, so when you take off that filter, by default, whenever you go into any of these tabs, your user will be applied as a filter, and you will be able to see only the integrations that you updated. But you can remove that filter, and when I remove that filter, I'll be able to see the other integrations which other developers are working on. And until Gen 3, we don't have a way to control this, guys. Until Gen 2, we don't have a way to control this. So whether we like it or not, yes, the username will be applied as a filter. But if somebody takes off that filter, we can see what everybody else is also doing. Okay, for that matter, say for example, if Amit and Kalyan are from different integration teams, maybe I'm working in a finance implementation team, integration team. Amit is working in a HCM integration team. Let's say Kalyan is working in SCM, supply chain management integration team. Even though we are from different integration teams, and there's absolutely no need for Amit to see what I am building, because I'm building fin related integrations, he is building HCM related integrations, right? But even though we are from different integration teams, when we take out a filter, the integrations used to be visible to others. So for that reason, what Oracle did is in generation 3, to give you a better control in terms of access, Oracle has come up with a concept called projects. So if you're working in an integration project for a client, and if your client has multiple integration teams, and those integration teams could be by country, could be by project, or could be by rollout, etc., doesn't matter. Yeah. And if you need access control, like say for example, Prasad from finance integration team, whatever integrations Prasad is building from finance integration team should not be visible to Amit, who is from HCM implementation team. So in such case, what do? We don't build the integrations directly in the design here. Instead, we go to projects, and in projects, we create a project. So here also we see the username. So we can create a project here, and within the project, we are going to build the integrations. So you would have 4 projects, so 3 projects created: finance implementation, HCM implementation, and SCM implementation. And for finance implementation project, we will give access to Prasad. And for HCM implementation project, we give access to Ahmed. And for SCM implementation project, we give access to Kalyan. So that what would happen? Amit can only see what SCM team is building. Prasad can only see what finance is building. So this project is a newer concept that we have got in Oracle Integration Cloud Gen 3, which would help you to control who can see the integrations. So this is called as a role-based access control. So you can clearly control. So if you see here, you can grant permission of your project to the other users, and you can also mention what the other user can do on your project. Can he only monitor it, or can he see the integrations but not make any change, or can he even edit the integration? So this role-based access control, with the help of a project, would help you to restrict the integrations that you created from being visible to other integration teams. And yes, as part of the course, when we build the integrations, we would create a separate project for your batch, and we would put your integrations into it. Remember, this is a newer feature that we have got in Gen 3, much awaited feature, because we were missing this feature badly in Gen 2. Because in Gen 2, what's the behavior, guys? Or even in the design mode in Gen 3. In Gen 3 also, if you go to design mode here, and if you build your integrations here, the moment you take off username as a filter, everybody gets to see everything. So in a project, so in case anybody is confused between, Prasad, when do I use integration designer and when do I use project? Plain and simple question you need to ask yourself. Do I need access control? Are there multiple integration teams in a project? Is there a requirement to restrict integrations from being built by one team should not be visible to other team. Are there any such restrictions required? If the answer is yes, then go for projects. And sometimes what would happen, many clients do this as well, or many clients doesn't have multiple integration teams. And when clients doesn't have multiple integration teams, what do they do? Since there is only one team, it doesn't really matter whether I use integrations here or whether I use projects, because all the integration team members would be added to a project and they anyways get to see the integrations. Okay, that's about the projects that you see and the access control. Now, before I talk about create here, see when you create an integration, you need to pick a style. Before I get into that stuff, let's talk about this import option. So when do you use this create and when do you use import, guys? Any guess? When do you use create? When do you use import option?
Import for migration, maybe.
Import for migration, absolutely. So say for example, if you're say one of you are leading an integration team, and let's say you have 5 members in a team. And as part of the project, let's say you need to build 100 integrations. So what are you going to do? You and your team members are going to log into dev OIC instance, and you would use this create button to build those 100 integrations in dev OIC instance. You would log into dev OIC instance, create a new integration, and depending on the integration requirement, you would pick up appropriate style. Depending on the integration requirement. I'm going to discuss this in detail in 10 minutes from now. And then after you pick a style, you would create an integration and you plug in logic into it. And after that, of course, after the build is done, you would activate the integration and you would also do the unit testing. And let's say you and your team have created 100 integrations. Now tell me one thing, guys, what are the phases that we normally have in an implementation project, guys? Whether it is EBS or Fusion Cloud, what are the stages that we have in a project? Anyone?
Dev UAT production, or you're talking about that build?
Yeah, dev, SIT, UAT, and production. These are the normal phases that we have in an implementation project. Okay. I have a bad throat, guys. Just excuse me for today. Tell me one more thing, guys. Would we have separate EBS or Fusion Cloud instances for each of these phases, or do you do everything in one single instance?
There will be separate instances, sure.
Of course, separate instances, right? So in a similar fashion, you would also have different OIC instances for every phase of the project. You would have dev OIC instance, SIT instance, you would have UAT, and you would have production as well. You would have a production as well. Okay. Now, yes, after a team has created 100 integrations. So let's say I'm leading this integration project. There are 100 integrations created in dev instance, and I've got a call from client today, and they said, Prasad, from 24th of January, we are going to start the SIT. So please deploy the integrations from development to SIT. So what is it that I'm going to do, guys? So yes, we have created 100 integrations in dev instance. So what is the expectation? Expectation is that I need to move those 100 integrations from dev OIC instance to SIT OIC instance. So one option for you to migrate the integration is you can log into dev OIC instance. You can pick up one integration at a time, export it. And when you export an integration, what would happen, guys? There would be an integration archive file generated. And this integration archive file, it would contain the code of that integration. So whatever logic we have in it, it would be included. And within an integration, you might be using connections. You see, these are the connections used. And you might have probably used lookups. And you might have probably referred a JavaScript library within the integration. See, as we progress in the course, we're going to discuss each one of these features, guys, and we'll also use them in the integration as well. But when you export an integration, this particular file is going to contain the code of the integration, and not just that, all the underlying dependencies would also be included. So whatever connections are used in the integration, lookups, and the libraries used in the integration would also be part of it. So which means if I have to migrate an integration, I just have to export it. IAR file gets generated. I just need to pick up this IAR file, and I'm in dev OIC instance at the moment. I'm going to log into SIT OIC instance, a fresh instance. And in that SIT OIC instance, I can click on import button here, and I can pick up that IAR file. I can pick up that IAR file and I can import it. Now, when you migrate an integration, we need not worry about the dependencies, guys. As part of that IAR file itself, everything would be handled internally. Now, tell me one thing is, if we have 10 integrations in a project, you might probably be willing to do this option. But would you be okay to do this 100 times, guys, if you have 100 integrations? Like exporting one integration at a time and importing it. What if you have 500 integrations? It is not even feasible. So that is exactly where Oracle has come up with a concept called packages. That is when Oracle has come up with a concept called packages. So whenever you create an integration, irrespective of the style you pick up, whether it is app-driven or schedule, we'll come to this in a moment. Irrespective of the style you pick up, you have an option to put integration into a package. So if one of you are probably leading a team, you need to send out a very clear-cut communication to your team right at the beginning of the project, saying that, boss, please don't use your nicknames in a package. Instead, if you're building an integration related to ERP cloud, let's say your team is building 70 of them. So you tell them very clearly that those integrations have to go into ERP_package. So if they are building ERP related integration, you ask them to put it to ERP package. And at the package that you put in, if it doesn't exist, it would be created when you put the first integration into it. And the integration definition is going to sit in that package. And if you go to a HCM package, all the HCM related integrations that we build will go and sit in that package. So you send out a clear-cut communication that ERP should go into this package, HCM should go into this, sales would go into this. So if everybody followed instructions properly, when you go into packages tab, if you go ahead and search for the packages here, you should probably see 3 packages here. In HCM package, assume that this is HCM. You should see 20 integrations here. And you should see ERP, assume that this is ERP. And you have 70 integrations here. You should see 70 here. But life would have been much simpler if everybody followed instructions, right? Isn't it, guys? So say, for example, there's one developer, John, building an integration related to ERP cloud. But deliberately or maybe by mistake, he has put it into HCM package. Possible, yes or no? Okay, this is one thing that might happen. And there might be Steve building an integration related to HCM, and he's in a hurry to build the integration, and he didn't put it in a package. So yes, we get a chance to put integration into a package when you create it. And when you are about to deploy the integrations in bulk from one instance to a fresh instance, we usually do it with the help of packages. And before we export the package, we need to first see what all integrations are there in that package. So we need to click on this integrations and see what all integrations are part of this package. So are these only ERP related ones? So there are two possibilities here. An ERP related integration could be missing from here, and you might find a non-ERP related integration here, could be HCM or Sales Cloud. So in such cases, first of all, you need to make sure that these are all the ERP related ones. If there is something more, you need to push it to other package. And if there is a ERP missing, we need to repackage them. So yes, you can put the integration into a package when you create it. And you also have an option. You also have an option to change the package of the integration after you create it as well. You can repackage it. So for example, if you see this integration, the integration is in draft status or configured. You pick up any of them. And if you want to change the package, how do you do it? After you get into an integration, you click on this menu option. Sorry, not this one. Click on the settings. And here you see an option to change it. So this is a journal import service and it should be put in ERP package. But if it belongs to some other package, I can change it here. I can change it here. Okay, so depending on the requirement, not depending on the requirement, before you migrate a package, you need to make sure that you have the right integrations in it. And if there is some corrections needed, you can go to integrations, open the integration, and you can repackage them. And after you repackage them, once you're absolutely sure that yes, you've got only the required integrations here, you go ahead and export it, and that would export a PER file. What does PER stands for? Package archive. And this package archive file, it is going to contain the code of these 5 integrations. And not just the code of 5 integrations, all the connections, lookups, and libraries used within that integration would also be migrated automatically. We don't have to worry about it. So one good thing with migration of integrations is whether you do it one at a time or whether you do the bulk deployment through packages, not just the integrations, connections, lookups, and libraries also get migrated. And another important point is, after you, and how do you import a package? We are in dev instance. We exported the PER file. You need to log into SIT OIC instance. And in the SIT OIC instance, you go into packages tab and you import that package. And you import the PER file. So whether you import IAR or PER files, all the integrations, connections, lookups, and libraries get imported. And it is your responsibility as a developer to configure the connections, guys. So if you look at the connections, right? So if you look at ERP connection, so in ERP connection in dev OIC instance, what is it that it will be pointing to, guys? It will be pointing to the dev or ERP instance. So meaning when you import a journal, it gets imported into dev instance. Now tell me one thing, guys. When I migrate an integration from dev to SIT OIC instance, and when clients start testing the integration as part of SIT, they would of course want the journal to be created not in dev OIC instance, but in SIT OIC instance, right? So when we import these files in the SIT OIC instance, the connections get migrated automatically. They get imported into SIT instance. But as a developer, we need to go ahead and update the connection, point it to the latest environments. So whether it is ERP connection or a Salesforce connection or SFTP connection, you will point it to the SIT credentials. And when you deploy it to production, you would point it to the production environments. Okay, so editing the connections is something that we need to do. I'm just trying to give you a high-level overview of this import and packages to do the bulk deployment, guys. Towards the end of the integration track, we will do a complete 1-hour session doing a hands-on exercise to understand how do we migrate integrations, how does a versioning of integrations work, and how does a cloning work. So when we do this session, we will do the migration hands-on. But just try to get a high-level understanding now. So apart from import and create, and as I do this, some of you might be thinking about these common questions, and this is something that I get very frequently. Prasad, I've got 5 integrations here, and I want to migrate only 4 of them. Can I pick and choose which integrations of this package to be included in a file when I export it? Sorry, we cannot pick and choose. At the moment when you export it, all the integrations you have in this particular project will be exported. So if you want to pick and choose and import only fewer integrations, what do we need to do, guys?
Maybe
You know,
inactive.
remove
we
the
go
the package names.
absolutely. We go to that particular one integration which you don't want, which doesn't belong to this, and you change it. Okay, now we go back to integrations. Apart from import, we have an option called create. And when you create an integration, first of all, you need to pick a style for it. You need to pick an integration style for it. And there are 3 styles for you. So let's focus on the first 2. You can build an integration using app-driven orchestration style. So this is called application style, or it is also called as app-driven, application-driven orchestration. So what does it mean? It means that this integration will start running when it is triggered or when it is called from another integration. Okay. So if client says in some integration scenarios, client says, Prasad, please go ahead and build an integration and share the integration endpoint URL with me, I'm going to invoke it from my system. From my source system, I'm going to call your integration on demand. As and when they have a requirement to import a journal or import an invoice, they're going to call our integration. So they don't want to, all they want you to do is build an integration, activate it. So if you use app-driven orchestration style, what would happen, guys? The moment you activate it, what would happen? The moment you activate it, there would be a URL generated. There would be a URL generated. And this URL is what you're going to share with the client. And what client is going to do? They're going to call your integration with the help of this URL. So if a client says that we need to build a use case wherein you build an integration and share the endpoint URL with them so that they can call it from their application on demand, we need to make use of app-driven orchestration. Now, when is this handy, guys? When would this come handy? So for example, let's say you're doing a implementation project for a telecom operator. Maybe you're doing it for British Telecom or Airtel or Vodafone. So they have a billing system, and they have billing systems where AR invoices get generated. You're receiving payments from the customers, and we need to import those AR invoices. Need not be telecom, guys. It can be any other client as well. All of them do have billing systems and point of sales. So yes, AR invoices get generated, and those AR invoices need to be imported into cloud. But this time the client says, Prasad, our billing systems are capable of invoking an integration. So all we want you to do is build an integration in OIC which is capable of importing AR in cloud, and just share that URL with me. Just share that URL with me. And from the billing system, they are going to call that integration. They're going to trigger that integration built in OIC. And to that integration, they are going to pass in invoices payload. Invoices input, they're going to pass as input to the integration, the invoices that they need to import. And they're going to pass in that invoices import. They're going to pass in that invoices payload as input in XML or JSON format. In XML or JSON format. And what are we going to do within the integration? Within the integration, we are going to go ahead and plug in logic to create invoices in ERP cloud with that payload we receive. So we'll worry about how to plug in logic into the integration later on, guys, but try to get a high level view. So if you need to build integrations for use cases like this, like client wants you to build an integration and share a URL with them so that they can call it from other applications on demand. So if you build an integration using application style, plain and simple, guys, somebody needs to trigger it. And who is that somebody? It can be another application that a client has. It can be a billing system invoking your integration, passing in invoices information, or it could be Salesforce application calling your integration, passing in customers information. Remember, guys, we have seen one integration yesterday, right? One integration use case. What style is appropriate for that use case, guys? What was the use case that we discussed yesterday, first of all? Salesforce to ERP service. Who is going to call this integration, guys?
Oh, Salesforce.
Yeah.
Salesforce, right? One for Salesforce to call my integration, what style I need to use? I need to use application style. And after I activate that integration, I'm going to plug in that URL into Salesforce application. So Salesforce application is going to call my integration. Remember, we have seen that in the outbound message, right? So in the outbound message, you're going to plug in that so that Salesforce is going to call our integration and pass in the details. So when you create an integration using application style, another application should call our integration. It can be Salesforce calling our integration. It can be an approval process in PCS calling our integration after all the approvals are obtained. It can be ERP Cloud triggering our integration when a business event occurs in ERP Cloud, maybe when an item is updated or any other scenario, you can trigger an integration. So it basically means on-demand integrations. Okay, you build an integration, URL gets generated when you activate it, and that URL can be used to trigger this integration on demand from the other application. But in some use cases, you might have to build a scheduled orchestrations, guys. So what are scenarios? Let's look at a couple of them. Let's say you're doing an implementation project for a WMS system, sorry, for a manufacturing client. Let's say you're doing an implementation project for a manufacturing client and they have an internal warehouse management system. Let's call it application A. So in the system, items get updated, and whenever items get updated, there would be CSV files that get generated, and those CSV files would be placed in SFTP server 1, which is an on-premise FTP server. But remember, these items CSV files that are generated, right? That item updates should be made available to the third-party system. Should be made available to the third-party system. Okay, they might be using some shipping application like OTM or any other app, and these item details should be made available to that third party. Now, tell me one thing, guys. Can we go to the client and ask them to expose this on-premise FTP server to the third parties, guys? Will clients do what?
No.
No.
They won't be
No.
okay with it because there might be a lot of other files that might be stored on that on-premise FTP server, and they say, Prasad, are you all right? Is this your first integration project? I cannot expose my on-prem server to the third parties. Then what is it that you do as a developer? You go ahead and say, you go back to application B and ask them, boss, is there any other FTP server that you have access to? Application B says, Prasad, I have access to server 2, an external third-party SFTP server. So, and they say that, Prasad, if you can move the files or transfer the files from here to here, I can access this SFTP server, I can pick them up and process it at my end. So there would be plenty of scenarios that you come across like this, guys. It could be SFTP server or it could be some other destination. But yes, as a whole, the source would be writing files to one location, whereas the target application expects the files to be in a different location. In such cases, what do we need to do? And let's say this WMS service generates the files, say 2 times or 3 times in a day, or maybe once in a day. Let's say it does it at 1 o'clock in the morning. What do we want to do? We want to build an integration to transfer the files. We want to build a file transfer service. And we want the service to run at 1:30 every day. Nobody is going to trigger that integration. WMS system will just place the files and it is not going to call your integration. So what do you do in such case? In such case, we create a scheduled orchestration. And when we activate it, we would define a schedule in such a way that it runs every day at 1:30. And at 1:30, the service would go to the FTP server, lists down the files, picks them up from server 1, drops it in server 2. So whenever you want to trigger your integrations based on a schedule to transfer files from one location to another location, scheduled orchestration is more appropriate for it. So we're talking about only transferring the files here, right? So let's talk about another scenario. Let's say this time you're doing an implementation project for a banking client, core banking system. And a banking client has a core banking system where journals get created all through the day. And after close of business, around 3 p.m., sorry, around 3 a.m. every day, core banking system is going to prepare one single journal file with all those journal lines, and they're going to put it in SFTP server. What is the expectation, guys? We need to load this journals file into ERP cloud in an automated manner. How do we do it? Nobody is going to wake up and call your integration at 3:30, guys. So what do we need to do? We need to load this journals file into GL cloud application. So in such cases, we create a scheduled orchestration. So these are all typically automated file uploads. So you schedule and you build a scheduled orchestration to run at 3:30 a.m. in the morning. And from the integration, you're going to pick up an SFTP, pick up a file from SFTP. You are going to, and within the integration, you would transform, enrich, or validate the file. Whatever changes you need in the file, you're going to make them. And you would use FPDA approach to load the file into ERP cloud. This FPDA is basically a process that you need to use to load the bulk data into ERP cloud application. We'll talk more about this when we do that integration. In a similar fashion, you might also have another custom application that a client might have, and that application might be giving a HCM file, could be employees file or departments file, and they're going to put it in SFTP server at 3 o'clock. In a similar fashion, we need to build a scheduled orchestration, pick up the file. We can do the required transformations, everything that you want to do. And then we need to make use of a process called HCM data loader automation to load the data into HCM cloud application. Okay, these are not some cooked up stories, guys. These are all the actual integrations that we are going to build as part of the course. So if you see the way course content is designed, we're going to build 15 plus integrations covering all these scenarios that I'm talking about today. FPDA automation, file-based how do you do an automated file upload to ERP cloud? How do you do an automated file upload to HCM cloud? How do you integrate Salesforce with ERP? How do you build these on-demand integrations? Like we discussed app-driven orchestrations, right? To import AR invoices or journals. So we're going to build 2 integrations to import journals and AP invoices, and these are on-demand integrations or application-driven integrations. So we'll be covering all of them. We'll be building each one of them as part of the course. So that's with a scheduled orchestration. So if at all you need to build an integration, and if that integration has to be triggered on its own based on a schedule, nobody is going to call it. It has to be triggered on its own based on a schedule. Then you go for scheduled orchestration. And you also have a concept called events, guys, in OIC. So we can define an event in OIC, and from one integration, you can publish an event. And from other integrations, you can subscribe to an event as well. So if you look at the events, right? So from one integration, first of all, you can define an event. So you see this particular event, I've mentioned it as an item event. Now I can define an event and I can define a structure for it. And after you define an event from one integration, we call them as publishers typically. From a publisher integration, we can publish an event in OIC. And you can, from other integrations in OIC, we can subscribe to that particular event. So what would happen as soon as this particular integration publishes this event in OIC channel, whatever subscribers we have for that particular event, all these subscriber integrations get triggered at the same time, and they are going to send the data to the destinations. They are going to send the data to the destinations. So what's the ideal way to let's try to understand this with a use case. When do you do it? So for example, a client gives you a use case like this. When item is updated in ERP cloud, we need to send the details to a database. We need to put a file in FTP, and we need to call a REST API and send the details to another application. So meaning when one update happens in one application, we need to send the details to multiple destinations, guys, like a database, SFTP, and another application. So in scenarios like this, like when you have to send update done in one application to multiple destinations, that's when we typically make use of events. So what we do is we create a publisher service first. We create a publisher first. We define an event. That's the first step. We define an event with the fields that we need, and we create a publisher integration. And whenever item is updated in ERP Cloud, in this integration, what do? We use ERP connection as a trigger. We subscribe to item update event. And from this publisher integration, we are going to publish this event. We're going to publish this event. And as soon as this publisher is going to publish this event, and when would this publisher be triggered? It would be triggered automatically when item is updated in ERP Cloud, because that's how we are going to build it. And that item details, whenever it is published, this event would be published by this publisher. As soon as this event is published by publisher, these two integrations are subscribing to that event. So these two integrations get triggered automatically, and one of them picks up item update, and they would start writing details to a database. Another one would pick up the item updates, and they would start writing a file to FTP. So what's the benefit of using publisher subscriber, guys? All the subscriber integrations get triggered at the same time. So they would start writing details to the destination, and failure of one subscriber will not impact the other one. Even if DB server is down, only that integration fails, not the FTP. So we'll also be building event-driven orchestrations as well. So this event-driven orchestration would come handy in scenarios like this. So when we build the publish subscriber integrations, we would explore that in more detail. And we would also do one integration wherein we'll see how to make use of a connectivity agent that we have here to integrate with on-prem applications. Okay, and apart from these integrations, connections, you already know, because whenever you create a connection, remember, we need to pick up an adapter, and you have got adapters for every application. Like when you search for Oracle, you have plenty of adapters here, and these adapters are what you see here as well. Whatever adapters you see in the connections are the adapters that you see in this list. Agents is something that you use when you have to integrate with on-prem application. And when we do the SaaS to on-premise agent integration, we're going to look at the agent installation process in detail. So we'll cover this agent integration end to end. An agent it's basically a connectivity agent. Packages we've just seen, it would help you to group integrations into a bulk package and deploy the integrations to a fresh instance. And when you build integrations within OIC instance, especially when you do the integration build, in some integration mappers, you might have to use JavaScript libraries. Okay, but it would be very rare. And when we build the first integration in OIC, I'll teach you, or after we build the first integration in OIC, I'll teach you how to create a JavaScript library, and I'll also show you how to use it within the integration. And apart from this, we also have events we just discussed. Apart from this, we also have an option to define a lookup as well in OIC. So you can create a lookup in OIC, and lookups are typically used to store configurable information. So say, for example, in some integrations, what we do is, say, for example, if you take this journal import service, so this is the fourth integration we are going to build, guys. This is a fourth integration we're going to build as part of the course. Don't worry about the logic. It would take almost 4 to 5 hours for us to build this integration. In short, what we are doing here is, yes, this integration will be triggered by core banking system, and they would pass in journals as input to us. So we would invoke a web service, journal import service, to insert those journal lines to interface table. And then we'll submit one job to process those journals. And after that, we would check the job completion status here, whether the job completed successfully, warning or error. And based on the job completion status, we want to send out an email notification saying that, boss, 5001 batch imported successfully, or 5002 batch has ended in warning. And when we send out this email notification, normally what do we do, guys? When you send an email, what are the things that we see in there? We need to mention a to email address to whom we are sending an email. And we need from email address, subject and a body. So in the case of to email address, I can hard code an email there. Nobody is going to stop me from doing it. But is it a best practice to hard code the email IDs, guys? Let's say Tim is looking after GL today. I can hard code his email ID here. But is this a best practice, guys?
No.
No.
Because Tim is not going to work for us forever, right? He is going to change the company and somebody else might replace him. And if somebody else replaces him, what do we need to do? If we have probably hard coded it, we need to bring down the service, edit the integration, and change it from Tim to Steve. And tomorrow, what would happen after if Steve leaves the company and joins some other company? Again, we need to repeat the same thing. So as a best practice, we should avoid hard codings to the extent possible. And that's exactly when this is just one of the reasons where lookups would come handy. So what do we do in such case? We would go ahead and create a lookup. And in that lookup, a common properties lookup. And in this lookup, we're going to store the email addresses. So that what would happen? Tomorrow, if people change, so today you would have the email ID here. Tomorrow, if people change, you can put in Steve. Day after tomorrow, if it is John, you change it here. We don't need to make, and you create a lookup, store the email address in there in the lookup. And when you get the from and to email address, right, instead of hard coding it like this, you would pick up the value from a lookup. You say, go to this lookup boss, search in the property name column for this particular property, get the value. So it's like me saying, OIC, please go to this particular lookup, search in property name for this property and get this email address. So tomorrow, if people change, client will be able to help themselves. Okay, and notification would go to John. So this is just one of the usage of a lookup, guys. And there are plenty of other usages as well. You might have to, so there could be scenarios wherein you might have to store the mappings between different fields. Like say, for example, you might have to store the mappings between ledger ID and data access set ID, or you might have to store the mappings between items in one application and items in another application. So any mappings you want to store from one application to another application, any common properties you want to store, you can make use of lookups for it. Okay, so that's a high level overview of all the integration designer options, guys. I tried my best to give you a very high level overview today. We are going to do all of this in quite detail for the next 50 hours. And just 2 more minutes before I open it up for questions, guys. We are going to enable a passcode on the meeting after today's session, guys. So from tomorrow, if you have to attend the training session live, when you join the same Zoom meeting link, remember meeting link is not going to change, but when you join the meeting link, you would be prompted to enter a passcode for it. Request all of you, well, almost 18 or 19 folks have already paid the fees, and we have also sent out onboarding email as well. So for those 3 or 4 of you, if you are interested to continue in a course, please call me on this number or send a WhatsApp message after 10:30 a.m. today, please. After 10:30 a.m. today, please, and I'll let you know the enrollment process. Please try to finish it off today. If you're based out of US, give me a call once you wake up, because 10:30 would be quite late for you. But please note that you need to complete the enrollment process before the session starts tomorrow. I'm not going to share the passcode if you ping me tomorrow morning at 5:55 saying that, Prasad, I'll pay the fees today. Sorry, only after you make a fee payment, I can share the passcode. So the first 2 sessions are free and we are done with them with today's session. And with regards to the course details, I've explained them in detail in yesterday's session. 2-month training course, Monday to Saturday, 6 to 7 a.m. IST, 15 integrations, 5 EBCS, 5 PCS applications we built as part of the course. Every session we record, give you lifetime access to them. 3 months of instance access from your batch start date. That includes OIC, Fusion Cloud, SFTP server, and a database in cloud. We'll be using OIC Gen 3 as part of this course. And this is exactly what you would be given access to as well. Any questions? Any questions, guys, from anyone?
If we don't have available adapters, then is it possible to build the integration?
You can, if you don't have an adapter, 2 options for you, or you can go into connections. Say, for example, if you take this particular use case, the sales goes to ERP service. Okay, let's tweak the requirement a little bit. So as soon as the customer is created in Salesforce, we were supposed to create it in ERP, right? For ERP Cloud, we have an adapter. Okay, so that's what we were able to do. When we created a connection, we were able to pick up an Oracle ERP Cloud adapter. But let's say your client has a custom application called ABC. Okay, your client has a custom .NET application or a Java application called ABC. And let's say your client is using that custom application as a master, and you need to create a customer in there. But if you search for your custom application, you won't find an adapter. In such case, what do we need to do? You would make use of a SOAP or REST. So SOAP and REST are basically two types of web services available in the market today. And tomorrow and day after tomorrow session, guys, we are going to focus on those web service basics. Tomorrow we'll focus on SOAP service basics. Day after tomorrow, REST API basics. So you need to ask the client about, is there any REST API that I can call, which will create a customer in ABC application? If the customer gives you a REST API, you create a connection with a REST adapter. You plug in that REST API details in there so that the customer is created in ERP. And if client says, sorry, Prasad, we don't have a REST API, but we have a SOAP service, you use a SOAP connection to call it.
So
if you don't have
basically,
an adapter, we make use of a SOAP or REST APIs to talk to that application.
to get the input, right? Input payload.
Yeah. Not to get the input payload, yeah, to get the input payload and but to also pass on the details to the application as well. Both the options, trigger as well as invoke. We'll get into the granular details later on. That's okay. Any other questions, guys? From anyone?
So this events that we were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be a separate option here. Is it part of integration, or the events is like when we're talking about style, event orchestration is part of a style. But when we go to that UI, I see the integration there and events there, but I don't see, like in the left hand side, you see integration, connection. So when I click on the events, I would able to see the events and underlining integration that are part of that event. So is it part of integration, or events is a separate thing actually?
Okay, you define an event first. Okay, you come here, create an event. No,
Yeah.
let me tell you. I got your question, but you let me finish first. Okay, so the first thing that we do is we define an event, and after we define an event, what do we need to do? There should be one integration that publishes this event. So what do? We create that integration. We create that integration as this. We create an integration like this using application style. So for publisher integration, we use application style. And from this integration, we publish that event. We have an action called publish. We publish this event. And after we publish that event, there has to be another integration which needs to pick up that event and run, right? And who is going to pick up that event? So to create that subscribers, we would make use of this event related option.
Okay.
So what do? You're going to create a subscriber integrations like this.
Okay.
Okay. So you would create two integrations like this. Okay. And when you create these integrations, you pick up event related style. And when you say event, it is going to ask you which event you need to subscribe to. Say, for example, I say event and I say created. It asks me what is the Prasad to which event you want to subscribe to. So subscribers you create using that style. You define an event first, you define a publisher, and then you from one publisher integration, you publish it, and you create subscriber integrations using event style.
Okay.
So when we build these integrations as a publisher subscriber style, we'll talk about it in a lot more detail.
Okay.
And Prasad,
yeah,
what is the exception handle mechanism that we?
It's a 3-hour story. We will be talking about it in a lot more detail. Okay, when we do the journal import service, we will spend almost 2 to 3 hours talking only about fault handling in detail. And not just the fault handling is, yes, we will be building how to build complex integrations, VBCS, PCS apps as well. And when I build those integrations, I would be talking about how do you design those integrations, what factors you need to consider when you design them, what are the best practices, what are the pitfalls, and how do you need to avoid them. I'm going to throw light on all of that. Okay. See you tomorrow, guys, same time. And please check your email for a passcode. Only with a passcode, you will be able to dial into a Zoom meeting sessions. And check your spam folder as well in case you haven't received an email. And try to complete the enrollment process by today EOD. Request you to please call me on this particular number if you are interested. Please, no pings tomorrow morning 5:55. I'm not going to respond to them. Okay.
Prasad,
Yes.
we are having integration tab two places, right? One is design tab, the other one is project tab.
Mhm.
So if you want to
I've already explained. I've already
yes,
explained the
the
difference, right? So if you need access control, you use projects. If you don't need access control, you use design. Simple.
okay, okay.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow, same time.